Here we are, live now.
Perfect.
Yes, so I just want to say welcome to Ellie from Equal IT. This is the very first initiative, that we, or the first webinar that we do as part of Nordic Women in Tech Awards. We call it the Champions of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And this webinar, just to give you a little bit of an intro, is meant to be for featuring and celebrating individuals and organizations that are doing a lot for diversity and inclusion, or in the field of diversity, equity, belonging, and inclusion. And Ellie, you've been working with that for quite some time now. You also have experience, and from what I hear, many of the things or initiatives that you run right now are based on your experience, challenges that you went through. So I and we, the people that are probably watching us, want to hear how did you tackle also those challenges. But we take it one step at a time. These webinars, it will be series of webinars, and this is the very first one with Ellie. So you're our first guest at the webinar. But it's not going to be the last time that we are going to have this webinar with you for sure, because we've been working also with you for quite some time, and I'm excited. It's every time a great experience to sit and talk, even just a nice conversation, and it's a lot to do with knowledge, experience sharing, and it's so nice sometimes that you get to hear stories of others that went through a lot, but they fought for their place on the table. So I honestly, the reason why I thought of you the first time we decided to go for this series of webinars was because it's just your experiences, I would say, it's not just one, are very close to what the majority of women face in the tech industry. So it was all about spreading the word. And of course, talking about the experiences, but most importantly, how women can, how can we help them tackle those challenges through these experiences that we've had, but also how do we help organizations also adapt and become more inclusive towards, I would say, differences, because we're people, we're all different, right? But before we dive deeper, please share something more about yourself and also about Equal IT.
Yeah, of course. Firstly, I feel really honoured to be the first guest on this initiative. Such an important initiative, what you're doing. I absolutely love it. So thank you, Flamenna, and the whole Nordic Women in Tech Awards team. Really exciting. So yeah, my name is Ellie King and I'm the co-founder at Equal IT. So Equal IT was launched back in October 2021 now, and that's already gone incredibly fast, coming up to our second birthday. What do we do at Equal IT? Well, we support organizations globally to recruit inclusive teams. And that's across many different layers, tech, leadership, however that may look. We have a big focus on Scandinavia as a hub. That's an area I've been working in for over 10 years within technical recruiting. But what we also do is we combine coaching on how we can really build these inclusive cultures, how we can encourage more psychological safety, because yes, all well and good, we can build diverse teams. That's great. However, if we don't have the environment where somebody can feel like they belong, because when you feel like you belong, you're 6 times more likely to be engaged. When you feel like you're not included, for example, you're not going to be productive. And this is where the retention issues come in, and we have still a long way to go, I feel, on working on these topics. So that's an area that we combine with the companies that we support, coaching around how we can do that. How can we enable more equal opportunity for everybody to be their best selves and to thrive? So that's one area of our business, but community is really engraved in the foundations of absolutely everything that we do. So of course we have enjoyed collaborations with yourself and the wonderful team Flamenna, and we also really proud to give back through mentoring underrepresented folks in tech, whether that's they're just getting started in tech, they are struggling with jobs, really just preparing them in every layer of job and what that looks like. Interview preparation, CV tips, all that fun stuff that can actually be quite daunting and scary at times, especially if this is a new field for you. And that's really engraved in our DNA through own personal experiences and challenges, like you mentioned, Plamena, and I'm sure we can dive into those a little bit later on. But community really, for me personally, has been one of the driving forces in what has kept me going and what has kept me energized, in knowing that I have an external support system when at times I've felt quite alone and feeling like I couldn't belong.
Yeah, and I can heavily relate. I don't think that it's easy for others and, of course, organizations to actually get into the shoes of those that have experienced the challenges. And we keep saying challenges, but there's so many things. It's sexism. It's feeling lonely because nobody, if you're, for example, at university, nobody wants to do projects with you because you're the only woman there, and everyone kind of, in a way, automatically, it's due to stereotypes, of course, but they automatically get this or think that you're a woman, so you're not really necessarily good with technology, so they'd rather do the project with somebody else. It's just like it's a lot. It's a lot of prejudice, I would also say, that we go through. And maybe you can share some of the challenges that you went through. We've been discussing this also with you. This was just an example of challenge that I have faced as trying to build my career in the tech industry.
Yeah, of course. And you're right. It's really sad to hear often that so many go through challenges. Each individual, the challenges, but similar themes that I've been picking up on too. For me, I mean, if you was to tell that Ellie 7 years ago that she was going to be a co-founder, she would never have believed you. She really wouldn't. How can I best describe the Ellie 7 years ago? Quite broken down, feeling quite alone, and finding myself, I guess, in an environment where I was overthinking and doubting a lot of my own abilities. I found myself nervous to present ideas in a room out of fear of judgment or quite literally being completely ignored. And I just really felt like I didn't belong. I found myself masking my true self to fit into, dare I say it, this bro culture that I was in. And I didn't really feel so supported. And it was in that moment where I was really struggling. It was a very dark place that I actually was ready to leave an industry that I truly loved, where I was helping people find inclusive jobs. I was able to really build meaningful connections with people. I was ready to leave because I just felt like I couldn't be what I couldn't see. There wasn't a lot of representation internally.
Oh, no.
And also, like I said, those inner behaviors, that effect it had, the domino effect it had actually on a lot of things in my life, confidence, self-belief. But during that time, I would say for me personally, there were two things that really helped me get through that. And this is where community comes in and why it's such an important factor of Equal IT, because I got to experience community. So I was speaking to other folks who were working in tech, underrepresented folks who were experiencing, I guess, similar challenges. And we were having quite open and vulnerable conversations, which at first seemed really scary, really daunting to open up. But I then become to realize that there's so much power in that, because my story can help somebody else. Somebody else's story can help me, because we learn that we're not alone. We build a support system. We uncover solutions. We uncover things that helped others to remain energized. And that was a big driving force for me, that aspect of community. Attending virtual events, which at the time was very much the thing, and having these conversations. So that was one area. The second thing for me and it's why we advocate this so much within Equal IT, is really experiencing firsthand allyship. Now, I completely recognize I'm very privileged to say that I've experienced allyship, and I understand that wholeheartedly. But I'm very lucky to call that ally my co founder today at Equal IT. So it's been a real
Amazing.
full circle moment, which is amazing. Jonathan, my wonderful co founder. But this was a person who, when I was at my lowest, really helped to reignite that spark that had gone out. They were the upstander to call out the behaviors that weren't okay. And they just really helped me to align again with my why, with my passions, and for me to know that I can do these things. I am capable. These are just my inner imposter coming in because of external experiences, and I shouldn't let that impact me, my success. Not only is Jonathan an ally to me, but to so many, and to so many from every community as well. So those were the two things that really helped me through a difficult time. And that's why these experiences have really, truly been the driving force behind launching Equal IT, behind why we do what we do, because paying it forward, sharing that inspiration, helping others who are in similar positions, it's so important to us that we do that, because I've been there myself. I've experienced it. I've been at that low moment. And although realistically speaking, I can't help every single person out there who is feeling like this, that's what I'm aiming for. So I'm going to keep going for that. We're going to keep aiming for that and hope that we can do everything we can, and also coach companies on how to support folks who may be feeling like that.
Yeah. I love when you say the import or showcase, I would say, the importance of allyship, because there is many things that we don't understand as people. I don't understand how the LGBTQA plus community, how, you know, the challenges that they go through, what they experience on a daily basis, sometimes the hate that they experience. I don't know it. But I don't know and I don't understand so many things. That doesn't mean that I should reject them. It means that I should be kind. And even though if I cannot be an ally, I can just simply be just, you know, be nice to people. I think this is the most important thing. Hate has not helped anybody. And yeah, if you don't understand it, just don't even reject it. I mean, just you can just be kind to people. That I this is what I think is so important. And we've had a case where I have a sister that is younger than me, and she called me one day and she said, so my boss called me and he said that there's no place for kindness in business. And that struck me so much, because she's trying to build her career there, right? And we keep pushing people. I want to be, you know, I want to keep the empathy. I want to keep the kindness. I want to keep the femininity in whether it's business or technology, anywhere. I want to be the human that I am and do what I love. It's as simple as it is, but at the same time as difficult to achieve nowadays, right? So yeah, I think if you cannot be a role model, or you cannot be a mentor, or you cannot be an ally, just, you know, just be kind. That's it's as simple as it is. Stop judging people, stop judging anybody, just allow them to be and do what they love. This is how I feel. So
Treat
yeah,
humans as human, right?
yeah, allow them to be humans, no, right? It's not difficult.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, on that whole aspect of allyship, I think that a lot of people can maybe fear that. They don't want the title being an ally. They feel like they're taking up a space that maybe isn't theirs. But
Yeah.
being an ally doesn't mean you have to be moving mountains. Being an
No.
ally can
True.
quite literally be giving an open ear to somebody if you're able to, active listening, having curiosity, asking questions, trying to understand someone else's lived experiences so you can better support them moving forward.
Yeah.
It's doing it with compassion, like you said. And I love what you mentioned there. Kindness is so important. It really truly is. And I think we're definitely we're losing that slightly, especially
Yeah.
now with a lot of companies. I understand it's difficult financial, economical times at the moment, and a lot of companies are just worried whether they can actually survive. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean we should lose kindness, we should lose humility, treating
Mm.
your employees as humans, treating them with respect, because remember, any decision you make as an organization could have a ripple effect onto your employees, and your employees
Yeah.
have emotions, have lives, maybe have families. So
Of
it's
course.
about approaching that in the right way. And it ties in, I guess, with psychological safety. So I spent
Mhm.
a lot of time the back end of last year speaking to many folks from underrepresented communities on if they reflect on when they felt like they most belonged in tech, what actions, what behaviors led to those feelings, because I wanted to almost like shine the spotlight on the good things that people have experienced in hope that others would follow suit or it would ignite some sort of inspiration. And kindness was really high up there. It was actually leading with empathy, kindness,
Yeah,
not
exactly.
being, yeah, and not being afraid to be vulnerable as leaders also at times. That,
True, true.
yeah.
With your experience now that you're also working with companies and you consult companies, how to do better or perform better or how to properly diversify their teams, because we actually see a lot of companies that are making mistakes.
Yeah.
They're focusing so much into making sure that their teams are 50-50. They're missing the whole idea behind diversity and inclusion, because it's one thing that you hire people, you change your recruiting process, but it's a whole different thing that you retain these people in your organization, right? Um, so what has your experience been like? Where do you think they're making most mistakes when they're, well, some companies are at least trying. We should give them that.
Never
But
stop somewhere.
where do you see kind of, the mistakes that they make?
Sure. Yeah. So a big part of what we do is we also present, give visibility to hiring managers of underrepresented folks working in tech. That's a big part of what we do. But for us, it's so important to come away from that whole concept of tokenism. Now, like you said, this is an issue I think companies are faced with right now. It's maybe working on DE&I to just tick a box because it looks good. It's a good
Yeah.
marketing tool. And this is really where I'm seeing a lot of companies struggling in that area, because again, it comes into that retention problem. Because yes, we can tick a box, that's great. But if the environment isn't what it should be, then no diversity is going to be able to thrive, flourish, feel like they belong. So what we've tend to see as well is that understanding it's not a one size fits all. So what works for one business might not work for another. And I think that it's understanding that as organizations as well. When it comes to DE&I, it's not a one size fits all. You have to treat every individual as an individual. And again, that comes into treating humans as humans. Just because one individual is from one community doesn't mean that their lived experiences or challenges are going to be exactly the same. So understanding for companies also that it takes time. I would say that at the moment, it's all about that quick fix. How can we see profitability increase quickly from this? Not really having that patience that is required around DE&I, because it's an ongoing effort. This is something that, in my opinion, is never going to fully be where it needs to be. So we always have to be driving initiatives, making those small incremental changes into our hiring process to make sure that we're building these inclusive cultures. If we stop doing that, then we're going to fall short. And companies, when they hit the tick box, they then stop doing these things. They stop running the initiatives. They stop investing in these initiatives. And this is the problem.
It's not wrong. Yeah,
So,
I fully agree with you. The one thing that I have seen throughout the years when we've been working also with a lot of companies around Nordic Women in Tech Awards, and another thing that I see, which I think it's kind of a two sides of a coin here, right? They are doing PR based on different initiatives that they either support or are part of. But if you look into, internally within the organization, nothing has changed. So it's one thing, and I understand that you want to sponsor or you want to be part of women in tech events or women in tech initiatives or diversity and inclusion initiatives that are happening around, but it's not enough just to, send the money. That doesn't, that it doesn't really do anything for you internally apart from PR, from kind of external branding, but that doesn't help your employees.
Yeah.
And it's word to mouth everywhere, especially if you're within a small, I would say, community, and everybody knows um, the companies and the reputation of the companies. And nowadays, making sure, because we are so connected, right? Like, we are so connected, we can live anywhere we want, we move so easily these days. And because we're kind of the generation that wants to explore everything and see the world, we tend to change much more or change jobs much more often than it was before. We have, because we have so many opportunities, and of course you would go to the company that gives you most, and this is making sure that it's basically happy employees, happy customers, right? Because you start from your employees and then you get the money, basically.
Yeah.
Because they get more motivated, right? They get more, they're happy to be part of the organization, and then they bring more value to the organization. But it's not all companies that think this way, right? So yeah.
That's so true, Pamela. Yeah, I actually saw a survey. I think it was by CNBC, and the survey showcased that 80% of folks who took part in this said that they want to work for a company that values DE&I also. So the stats are there. People are caring about this a lot more. They're a lot more in tune with it. And I know that through the folks that we support, when it comes to even the interview process, a question that they have at the top of their mind is presenting to businesses, okay, how do you value this? What are you doing? Are you walking the talk when it comes to your values? And that's so, so important. And a big thing is, like you said, as environments, are you practicing what you preach around DE&I? Because I think it was the Women in Tech Sweden, they released a report. It was State for Women in Tech 2023. And a reoccurring thing that come up around how companies can provide a more inclusive, better environment for women specifically was equal pay, work-life balance, and equal opportunities. So as organizations, are you putting the microscope onto actually these areas, and how are you breaking that down? How are you offering flexibility, let's say, within these areas? Let's look at work-life balance, for example, right? Is there flexibility actually around remote work? How are your views on that? We're seeing a lot of big companies at the moment shift the landscape when it comes to remote work. Companies that were once very much this remote first organization are now saying, sorry, we need you to come back in. But is that feasible for maybe some of your employees who have families, who have disabilities, who are neurodivergent, for example? Is that really realistic for them moving forward? So are they going to be comfortable? Is this going to be a barrier for them, which then in turn potentially could end up in them leaving your organization? And for women in particular, do you have things like the menstrual leave or the menopause support, these kind of miscarriage, child loss support? Do you offer these areas that are really important factors within the flexibility of work-life balance? Do your employees feel empowered to take sick leave as well? I've myself been in an environment previously where almost feel guilty for taking a day off because you're unwell, and sometimes you work through that because you don't want to let anyone down. And as we know, as we've discussed previously, Pamela, as women, we feel like we need to work twice as hard maybe to prove ourselves. We don't want to be seen as potentially weak in some instances, when we're not at all weak, but it's those internal feelings and thoughts we have because of the biases that we've grown up around, I guess.
It's the bias. So it has a lot to do with that. In many cases, you're not taken seriously, which is something that we mentioned earlier. We were at an event a few days ago, and there were these two ladies that were developers at the company, and they were saying pretty much the same thing that me and you have discussed multiple times. They were like, we were lacking role models. We felt like the entire IT industry was telling us that we don't have a place there, like everything was against us. And they were like, if we didn't love technology that much, we would have probably given up, which is the case with many women that are starting, either computer science or any other programs. They get into the first semester, they see that everything is basically against us, unwelcoming. All your teachers are male, all your colleagues at the program are male. Everything is hard, and you have to work, as you mentioned, twice harder. In many cases, your opinion doesn't matter if you're sitting on the table, because you might have exactly the same kind of solution to a problem, but if a man comes up with a solution, it will be taken. If you come up with a solution first, you'll be disregarded because they wouldn't take you seriously. So it's this has been and it keeps happening nowadays, which is really bad. We live in 21st century. The women in tech movement have been there for years, and I see that there is a little bit of progress in the right direction, but I expected more. And maybe it's just on my end, but I felt like we were focusing so much into changing women with these organizations. We were like, educate women, support women, empower women. But what happens with the organizations? Like, who is telling them, hey, it's not us, you need to change and adjust. You need to look into your recruiting process. You need to look into your teams and how they act in certain situations. You need to invest into teaching or educating your either tech teams or the employees within your organization about diversity, equity, and inclusion, something that you're working with, Ellie. And I think that what you're doing is absolutely amazing. We need to see more organizations being involved and taking action. And that leads me probably to a question here where, and maybe two questions in one that we can combine, but it's more about how organizations how can they take action? So basically, what is the first step that they can take, right? Because I see some organizations that started feeling, okay, maybe we're not doing something right because we don't get enough women applying for, the positions that we have open. If they realize, I think this is the first step of realization that you have to do something. I see it as probably the biggest step, because there's some companies that are still blind, thinking that, things work for us here, we don't have to change anything. But the very first kind of, like the bulb, you have the light bulb here saying that, okay, maybe we should do something about it. So from this part to the next step, what they need to do, I think this is probably the harder step, right? Because they don't know which way to take and how to handle things, because they probably don't know entirely what they're making or what they're doing wrong. So with your experience with companies, I see that they can of course reach out to consultancy agencies that can support them, but is there anything else they need to consider before they go for it? What do you think?
Yeah, certainly. So we need to get a game plan in place.
Yeah, exactly. It has to be.
Yeah, right. There has to be that game plan, because we can sometimes go down wrong lanes and they can take us down directions where we're not reflecting what we want to do in the best way and the most authentic way. So first of all, it's really about uncovering the why. Really, why do, as an organization, you need more diversity, more inclusion, more equity? But reflecting on that, having those deep discussions internally as a team, and actually uncovering your why, your personal mission statement around why that's important, let's say, And again, not just because it makes us look good, it has to be a lot deeper than that. I always say start with why. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek, and he advocates quite a lot, start with why. And it's a
Great
big
book.
engraved into Equal IT as well, having our why. But the statistics are there. I mean, just to share, why is diversity even important? First of all, better, faster decision making. When you have a diverse team, you have so much more innovation, creativity, new perspectives coming onto the table, new ideas. You're able to take your product onto completely different levels and areas that maybe you didn't even think you would if everybody was the same narrow-mindedness. And on that idea of products, you have more inclusive, more accessible products, because if you don't have a diverse team, just even without meaning to, there's going to be some kind of biases engraved into those products. And we've seen examples of that with the racial bias in facial recognition algorithms, for example, or where there was, I believe, the soap dispensers, where the soap dispenser wasn't detecting people of color, for example, too. And this was because these teams were not diverse. An example, I think, with Apple was their health app. I believe that they wasn't including a feature for period tracking. And then when they put that out and had the feedback, they then created I think it was a reproductive health tracking feature of some kind. But your products are going to be a lot more successful. And in this competitive market today, with how difficult everything is in the world financially, with all of these other businesses breathing behind you, chasing your tail, you're going to be ahead in so many different ways. So this is why it's so important. Of course, on top of that, the most important thing is morally it's the right thing to do. But with that in mind, what's the first thing you can do? Well, it's actually looking internally initially. So listening, gathering data to then make informed decisions on how you can go about your strategy and why you need to do that. So uncovering the why. Ask your current staff, ask your current team, ask your current company. Don't assume. Assumptions are dangerous. This is where we make wrong decisions and we just assume everything. So it's listening. So that can be done via an anonymous survey. So something that involves like inclusive language, that is also optional. Not everybody has to do it, but it's really important to share the why this is important when you're providing this anonymous survey to your teams. Bring them into this, and also have intersectionality in mind, because there's so many layers to different people. So it's really important to give context to the why you're doing it, how this survey is going to enrich everybody within the team, the company, how you're all going to grow from this. Because what you don't want to create is like an us versus them mentality when you're working on diversity. Oh, it's this community versus this community. We have to be working together. This is a collective thing. So this is an opportunity for folks to express opinions without fearing negative consequences. Their opinion can feel valued. People can feel that promotions and policies are fair and transparent. That's the kind of things you can be asking them. Do they feel that the company supports their ability to grow? Do they feel like they belong? And then you have the data from the surveys that you've been doing also. So that's qualitative data. It's all about feelings, perceptions, and then you're able to start generating your plan of what that actually looks like and how to even begin. But a big thing that we always advocate is really building a culture that is rooted in psychological safety. I would say that is number one, really, really key, because without that, inclusion can't flourish if there's no psychological safety. You can't tell someone that they're psychologically safe. You can't tell someone that they belong. They have to feel that internally, but you can certainly try and implement all of these small changes to encourage more psychological safety and have those one-on-ones, those check-ins, those open dialogue where employees feel like they can be very open and share actually their feelings without fear of judgments, without fear of losing their job potentially, in order to move forwards. So start with the data, I would say.
Such a great, this is what I usually say when people ask me, okay, but maybe we have an issue or if I hear from some HR representatives of organizations, they're like, yeah, maybe we can do something about it, but we don't know where to start. So I think this is literally like they have everything that they need, because you start from the organization itself and just ask questions. And another thing that I think helps a lot is running initiatives that are internal initiatives. I've had a lot of cases where there's some representatives or maybe women in tech from certain organizations that would come to us and say, hey, I really want to start a women in tech initiatives or women leadership initiative in within our organization, but I get a lot of pushbacks from either management or top management saying that, okay, but if there's women in tech, why there is no men in tech? And I was like, this actually shows how you don't understand, the nowadays challenges that we go through. There is a reason that we are trying to do more about women feeling inclusive and that they belong in some organizations, that whether IT or not, because basically everybody works with technology nowadays. So but I think this pushback that they get is actually what's going wrong within your organization. This is not something that you should say. That means that you don't understand what's going on. And you should actually put an effort, read a little bit more, and understand why we're doing it. So and I think like internal women in tech initiatives, I think this is such a great idea, having kind of community within your organization where you can just share your experiences, find the support that you need, potentially a mentor, role model, someone that can support you building in your career. And external events like Nordic Women in Tech Awards, maybe you can share a little bit about your experience from last year being a partner of Nordic Women in Tech. Why do you think that organizations should be more involved in external initiatives like that? Because maybe I can just give a little bit like an intro. With Nordic Women in Tech Awards, what we're trying to do is really to get companies to be closer to women that have accomplished a lot in the tech industry, hear about their challenges, get some information, and learn more about what they're doing, how they have managed to build their careers, hear about some data, or maybe even learn from other organizations that are already our partners, how they have tackled the challenges and how did they manage to find a solution of some of those, either I wouldn't say problems but challenges, or how did they manage to healthy or diversify their teams in a more healthier way, so some others don't feel excluded. Because we've had many cases where some companies will hire women only for the sake that they're women and to diversify their teams. And I think this is so wrong, and this is not how you do things. And this is exactly what it means to misunderstand what diversity, inclusion, and belonging is all about, right? So yeah, why do you think that companies should be a part of this? Initiatives like that?
Yeah, for sure. So firstly, I just want to say that the experiences that we've had around Nordic Women in Tech Awards, I can't actually put into words how incredible the experience has been. And actually going to the first Nordic Women in Tech Awards for us, being there, being in that room full of just incredible people, it was really positively overwhelming and emotional, actually, because you really feel the empowerment, you feel the support, and also you feel that this is genuine. This is an initiative that genuinely cares about making a difference and that is genuinely working towards a goal. And that also is for yourself, Plamena, Katarina, Rasmus, the whole team. Everybody involved with Nordic Women in Tech Awards is very true to the mission, really cares about this. And as a business, if you also want to be able to showcase that you genuinely care about these things, Nordic Women in Tech Awards is a great starting point. So why is it important? Well, let's look at it through the lens of a hiring manager and as a business, right? So As hiring managers, when we interview potential developers coming into our team, we have this really high expectation on them that they have to be able to provide tangible examples of a time that they've unlocked the matrix, and they have to be really detailed and specific with those examples that they share with us. Otherwise, they're not a good candidate for us. We're not going to hire them. They didn't go into the depth that we required. Well, as hiring managers, when people will ask you a question around DE&I, what it is you're doing, how are you working towards that, how are you investing in it, if you're not able to answer that question with that same depth and detail and provide those tangible examples, then is this really a fair expectation that we have on other people as well? Because we need to take accountability to be able to answer that question and provide these really positive examples. And by supporting Nordic Women in Tech Awards, by investing, by sponsoring, by being there, by showing that you care about these things through your internal initiatives too, that's an incredible way that you can give a tangible, solid example to people who are potentially going to join your business on why you care about these things, why you do what you do. Because representation and role models are so important, and we do still have a long way to go with that. I read a study by Samsung Electronics. It was, I think, around 92% of women aged 18 to 25, they admitted to not being able to name a famous woman in tech. And this is worrying. When I was at school, I'm not going to say how long that was ago now, but many years ago now, I also couldn't really name any famous women working in tech. I feel like they weren't really celebrated. I wasn't really giving that visibility. Tech, to me, seemed very one-dimensional. A cis white male, sat at a computer in a dark room. I know I'm being very stereotypical right now, but that's growing up the belief that I had. I now, of course, know that it's completely not that there's so much to tech, but this is the issue we still have with others. So Nordic Women in Tech Awards is also showcasing those role models, shining that spotlight, giving that representation, an incredible resource where it's just full of empowerment.
Thank you very much. I honestly appreciate it because I had the same experience like you. I didn't have any role models. And I love technology, and I knew that this is where I wanted to build my career. But the challenges were just, it was too much for a person to handle. And I was filled with doubts. Like there was no one that you could look up to, right? Someone that you were like, oh, I want to be like her one day. But and many people drop out because of that. They're like, okay, it's very hard to be something you cannot see, right? So what if you're not a fighter, if you don't push it and really fight for your place on the table, many of us just give up because they're like, okay, apparently this industry doesn't want me to be here, so I'd rather find something else that it's easier to get into. And as I mentioned, if you're not a fighter, you just drop out. And when we started Nordic Women in Tech Awards, we wanted to, as you mentioned, showcase, because women are there. We just don't talk about them. We don't celebrate them. We don't mention anything. And I wanted to show the next generations, hey, look at this. Look at this community. We are over 7,000 right now. Women out there that are working in tech, that are achieving a lot in the tech industry, and there is someone you can look up to. Because for me, it was just, I tried to use myself as a role model, like be better and better and better, so I can look up to something, because I wanted to make sure that one day someone, says like, oh, she really fought. I want to be like her one day. So this was, the mentality that I really tried to set my mind towards it. I really fought for it, but it was very difficult. And maybe you had similar experience. You're changing because you're in an environment that is so masculine and sometimes so toxic that you change because you're trying to fit in. And I think this is so catastrophic because it shouldn't be the case. But yeah. Ellie, I think we can wrap it up. So, because we are almost in the 45th minute, is there anything that you would like to share? Maybe what is the next step for Equal IT? How they, our viewers can get in touch with you, maybe, or yeah, any wise advice if you have.
Yeah, yeah. That's gone so fast, by the way, 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's always such a pleasure when we're with you. We can talk for hours. There's so many things that we can share. So this is definitely not going to be the last time we meet.
Well, something I would like to share is if anybody is struggling to have the visibility of more underrepresented folks, or who just wants to have a discussion around how to enhance DE&I within their organizations, we are always available at Equal IT for collaborations, and I welcome that with open arms. So feel free to reach out via LinkedIn, myself, Ellie King on LinkedIn, Jonathan Dan, my co-founder, even Finlay Green, our incredible employee also. Reach out to us, and we'd love to help. We also have our Equal Inspired podcast that we run monthly, where we amplify the voices of non-dominant groups doing amazing work in tech to create those relatable role models, and because representation is so important. So yeah, please feel free to reach out. And one last thing I'd like to say is something I've noticed also is if companies maybe are struggling, they're not diverse whatsoever, don't shy away from supporting an initiative like Nordic Women in Tech Awards. Just because you don't have visually a diverse team just yet doesn't mean that you can't start making those steps, and start to build these initiatives to then create a more inclusive culture for when you're hiring. And by investing in Nordic Women in Tech Awards, that's a great way to showcase that you have that awareness, you want to make a change in your business, that you wholeheartedly support women in this industry and showcasing role models and enhancing more representation. And it's a great way for you to even go to the Nordic Women in Tech Awards event to speak with so many wonderful people who are very open to sharing experiences, challenges, and to learn more. Because what I love about Nordic Women in Tech Awards also is when you're there at the event, there are also people from other communities at the event also supporting, and it's a sense of community and unity and working together, which is really nice. So don't fear investing in something like this just because you don't have a team of women in your business. This is a way you can start.
I couldn't have said it better earlier. Thank you very much for being our very first guest at this series of webinars that we're going to have. You're doing such a great job with Equal IT. We're looking forward to years of working together, and hopefully run different initiatives also together, not only partnering up with the Nordic Women in Tech Awards. For all the viewers out there, if you're part of an organization and you see that you don't feel included enough within, whether it's within your teams, or if you feel like an outsider, or there's anything that you don't feel welcomed enough within your organization, reach out to Nordic Women in Tech Awards. We're a huge community. The whole idea behind our community is to support those that are going through challenges in the tech industry, but also we're there to support companies. So if you are an HR or management representative from a company, and you care about the well-being of your employees, and you focus on diversity and inclusion, again, reach out to us, because all we want to do is get employees and employers speaking the same language. Thank you very much for today, and we'll be seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.